We're joined by Dr. Kristen Moffitt with Boston Children's Hospital. Thanks for being with us this week once again. So this week, major theme parks said they're reopening in the coming weeks and months. We're talking about Disney World, Universal Studios. If a family is considering going, maybe this summer, what is your advice?
Yeah, that is definitely enticing. It's exciting to start to think about summer vacation plans. I think that in general, though, when I think about the risk of different things that families may be planning, I think about what we've learned from examples of high numbers of cases that have come out of large gatherings, particularly large gatherings in enclosed spaces. So I think when it comes to things like theme parks, I do just worry more about larger crowds of people. The things that really relate to your risk of infection that increase your risk have to do with the number of people you're exposed to, the physical closeness that you have with those people, and the duration of time of contact with those people. So I guess I would just ask that families really be thinking about what parks are doing to minimize any of those risks. I could imagine that staying in a theme park also involves a lot of dining in restaurants. And so really taking those pieces of the risk into consideration and looking at what's being done at those parks to really minimize those risks.
Yeah, good advice. What about extended family? Maybe they live in another state and they want to travel here to visit. So you're talking about expanding your social bubble just a little bit. If it's family, maybe close friends, is that okay?
Yeah, so I think the answer is that nothing is zero risk unless every individual that's going to be part of that get-together has been living in a bubble for 14 days, which is just not practical. So the things that families can do to minimize risk when they are thinking about getting together is still to keep the numbers small. That still is very important. If it's going to be an overnight stay in someone's home, thinking about separate sleeping spaces, thinking about spending as much time when you are together outside as possible, when you are indoors still really trying to maintain space, thinking about cleaning high-touch surfaces in the house where you'd be staying, and additionally being very careful to not share any utensils or cups or anything like that. And importantly, keeping the lines of communication open both before the visit about any exposures that anyone who'd be visiting may have had in the 14 days prior, and then keeping the lines of communication after a visit in the event that anyone were to develop symptoms that everybody should be aware of.
Yeah, honest and open answers. All right, so let's talk about youth sports programs. A lot of them do plan to start offering practice sessions next month. So for parents, what kinds of questions should they ask before they send their kids? And do you think that certain sports could be safer than others?
Yeah, so I think important questions for the sports program would be to just ask very honestly, what are they doing to minimize the risk of children being in close proximity to each other? What are they doing to assure things that might also put kids at risk, like making sure everyone is going to have their own individual water bottle or drinking bottle? A lot of that will have to do with the sport as well. If, depending on the sport, how are they planning on running practices or drills that are going to minimize those periods of close contact? When it comes to types of sports, contact sports are certainly riskier than lower contact sports. Being on opposite sides of a tennis court, certainly safer and lower risk than tackling someone in football. So really keeping in mind what programs are going to do to modify those contact risks in particular.
All right, really good advice. Give us a lot to think about as we really try to navigate all of this. Dr. Moffitt, thank you so much for your time.